And welcome back. A very good afternoon to each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us for the third panel session, which is sibling without rivalry. So especially if you're a parent with more than one child, you would understand how critical this topic is because it's a daily occurrence, almost when left unchecked. So let me introduce us to our lovely panelists. We start with CAROLYN, who is a psychologist with Reconnect Psychology and Family Therapy Center. EEJAY. Thank you so much, CAROLYN, for being with us. We look forward to your expertise, okay? And then we have EEJAY, Chong EEJAY, who is the representative from Focus on the Family.
Yeah.
And you are an educator, a senior family educator.
Family life educator as well as counselor too. Yeah.
Counselor as well. Okay, wonderful. And then we also have a very familiar face to me, a friend, Alison Lim, who wears different hats, right? But I think the hat that you'll be putting on today is really the CEO.
Director.
The director of
Family Foundations,
which is, and the company focuses on
restoring and healing family relationships.
Okay. Is it non-profit or?
Yes, of course.
Of course, some more. And you all would know me by now, Julia, the founder of Mom Space, yeah? So let's talk about sibling and rivalry, because I think the tagline, right, is effective conflict resolution really does start at home. Because we can see rivalry as something to be avoided, something we struggle with, or we can see it as the opportunity to then build skills in the children so that in life they will thrive because got so much practice, all right, and how to do it effectively. So let's start with CAROLYN, right? Very often, you know, when we see outbursts or conflicts, we tend to focus just on the symptoms instead of going deep. So I want to drill this conversation deeper to the root to look at the why. So why in the experience that in your psychology work do you think siblings fight?
Okay, so I mean, first off, right, I like what you said about how it is actually a normal, natural thing, and most of the time it is healthy. You know, all living things, be it plant, animal, human beings, right, they will fight for resources in order to survive. So I would say that sibling rivalry helps to hone the child's survival skills and survival instincts. It teaches them how to stand up for themselves, to assert themselves, to learn to share resources, to work together, you know, to be able to resolve conflict, right, and problem solve and figure a way out. So I would say that it is actually a natural thing, right, and I feel that we should try to see it as a positive thing that can help the children to grow.
I love how you share that, right? Like it's also them finding their voice, right?
Yes.
Not being a doormat,
Correct.
but in how do I assert and when do I assert and to what level and to whom, you know? I mean, so many dynamics are at play.
Yeah.
And I think this are just them discovering their place in this bigger society, this bigger world.
Right.
So EEJAY, if we were to look at, you know, children go through different developmental stages, even the kind of fights they have are different, right? When they're younger to older. So how do we as parents allow them spaces to assert their independence and preferences?
Yeah, thanks Junior for asking that question. I think it's very important. I think when we talk about the different stages, developmental stages that the child goes through, I think what commonly, I mean just broad stroke, we always say that at a younger age is the age of instruction. And just receiving the instructions, you know, and it's the most common phrase that all parents do is no, don't run, don't touch this, no, it's always a no. As they grow through the early, you know, primary years, you know, that's when we realize that it's the age of imitation. They love to imitate, from superheroes to the people, especially the parents. They'll imitate the good and the bad. So including your conflict resolution styles. This is when they pick it up and then they will model it. Okay, and I have a little story to share later about my own 6-year-old who is imitating me in my own sometimes stress reactions and all that. Then of course at the later stage when you talk about the in the teenage years, that's when it's the age of inspiration, independence and all that. And this is where really they want to carve out their own space. So let me talk from the later to the younger age. So at the later independence, they want a space to make a lot of decisions. You know, from the color of their hair to the school that they choose, you know, to the fashion they wear, and these are often the things that sometimes you know, disagree with what parents think about. You know, black hair versus pink hair, green hair, and that kind of thing.
Purple hair.
Purple hair, you know. But how do we create that, you know, safe zone? You know, so maybe it is. Do you want to consider during the school holidays where you can have a little bit more freedom to try out some of these creative things? You know, then at the primary age, you know, they do want to have that voice. You know, how much time is on the screens? I think just now you had an earlier dialogue on that as well. You know, so that conversation, and then the common sibling question then is that how come Cheche and Koko can have more computer time, you know, and I only have like half an hour, you know, that's not fair, all right? But giving them that space to negotiate and find that there's a different calibration. You know, that Koko and Cheche is older, they have greater responsibility, demands, you know, you gotta do a lot of explaining, a lot of talk therapy, you know, we talk about it. And then at the younger age, you know, maybe it's more of like independence in terms of choices, you know, like what kind of toys they like to play with, you know, and when they're playing that toy, giving them that independence in terms of time. You don't need to always be there physically to play with them. Sometimes it's good to give them their own space to design. You know, I saw some parents when they're so maybe overly intentional. When the kid, the little toddler or the kid is like having their own free time to play, you know, instead of giving them that independent moment, they're like jumping in, you know, you must build it like that because the Lego book says it's like that, you know, like that, you know, so very dictative. But whereas the kid just want to build sengit, slanted, you know, whatever they like. So I think these are good moments. We can give them the space to be independent, you know, and allow them to, I wouldn't say assertiveness is always bad, you know, but that it gives them the voice, you know, daring to speak. But of course, when they are assertive to the point of being rude, you know, hitting, reacting, especially in siblings rivalry, I think that's when parents, we do need to step in and tell them that it is wrong. It is wrong whether it hurts people or it's against some of our family values.
Wonderful. I love how you talk about the 3 stages. Yeah. So instruction, imitation, and inspiration.
Yeah.
These are the 3 stages, and throughout the 3 stages, to still allow the child their autonomy because they are their own being.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, EJ. And Alison, you talk about when kids fight, it's because there's an unmet need. Do you want to share a bit more on that?
Actually, before I go on to that, I think I'm a bit like Caroline. Caroline or Caroline? Lin. Sorry. Yeah. I think we need to actually examine our perspective towards whole thing about conflicts. Yeah. So if parents always think that you know, conflicts are unhealthy, then we will avoid it. And then when we see the kids having conflict, we will be very uptight, we'll be very, you know, we'll be triggered, and then we will try to jump in very quickly to try to, you know, make sure that they live happily ever after. And that is a myth, right? So I think it goes back to that paradigm. What do you look at and see conflicts as? Yeah, if it's an opportunity, like what you say, right, ability to hone your skills, and they're going to need that in future when they work or when they're in schools dealing with classmates, then we will not jump in to rescue them immediately. Yeah. And you know, from my observation, basically because I'm a mother of 3 young adults, not even young adults, right? 30, 28,
adults,
and 24,
adults,
right?
okay.
Yeah. I think at the end of it, when there's always a conflict, there is a call for attention for the parents, right? And it could be a fact that, you know, actually I feel neglected, you know, I need to be affirmed as a person, I need validation, and so it comes out in ways. So when we have a conflict, what we really need to do is to help them have healthy conflict resolution skills in order to be able to emerge from the conflict stronger, right? So that they will be, you know, able to actually handle other human relationships better.
In life.
Yeah, in life.
I love what you say. So let's go to the how later. But if we were to move on to the who, right? Because typically in any family, there will always be that one problem child that we seem to distance or even already unconsciously label, even if it's not outright. So Caroline, I want to ask you, you know, and that is so damaging because that becomes the bias lens that it's not just from one person, no, but maybe multiple family members. And can you imagine reinforcing that on a daily basis of interaction? How can parents change our perspective? Because the self-fulfilling prophecy, I see you as the problem child. No matter what you do something good, also you see problematic. But how do we change our perspective?
Okay, so I think, you know, when we talk about a problem child, a lot of the times we are looking at their behavior. Defiant lah, they're provocative lah, they irritate people, they act out, and those behaviors annoy us, right? So what we want to do is to recognize that the behaviors are actually the tip of the iceberg. And there's so much that's going on beneath the behavior. So we need to look below the surface at what's actually going on with that child. You know, some children, you know, their brains, or because of their developmental stage, you know, they have difficulties with maybe perspective taking or impulse control. So we need to recognize that maybe this child doesn't have the skills yet to be able to meet our expectations. Then we need to look at their feelings, right? Under that anger and irritability, it could be masking feelings like hurt, fear, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, disappointment, you know, fear of feelings of being misunderstood, being unjustly treated, right? So when we look at those feelings, then we can have more compassion towards the child. And then, as Alison says, you know, we also want to look at the yearning and the needs of this child, the desire to be loved, to be accepted, to be understood, to feel safe, to be valued as a person, to be trusted. And finally, we want to look at how this child sees himself. You know, does he see himself as a worthy being, or does he feel that he's not good enough, that he's unlovable? So if the parents can try to look at the child with curiosity, get in touch with your own sense of curiosity and compassion, and look to the child and try to understand where the child is coming from, then hopefully we might be able to change our perspective a little bit more. The other thing is to recognize that everybody is different, every child is different, and we're all made that way for a purpose. And even though this child may not fit into your expectations or how the family, the rest of the family is like, having a different child actually is a good thing. You know, they inject energy, they inject variety, and obviously difference is helpful for the evolution of the species, right? So that is important.
I so love when you say that, because very often it's easier to love or to be with someone who's like me, but it's more challenging to be with someone who's completely a polar opposite. But that is where it's an opportunity for my growth, because if everyone was the same, I wouldn't have to grow, right? So I believe that children are a gift, and the one that actually triggers us the most, I assert now, are those that we are sent as mirrors for us to reflect inwardly. Why am I being triggered by this one more? What what unhealed wounds or inner trauma have I had that I haven't dealt with, and nobody actually pinpoint it until this child is brought into my life, and then I'm at choice. Do I want to deal with it or still push it away and then blame them, label them? So thank you so much for sharing the different layers, not just emotion.
An anecdote, right? Because I run these like ADHD parenting workshops, right? A long time ago. So during one of those workshops, right, all the parents were like tearing their hair out over their ADHD child and getting really frustrated, you know? And suddenly, out of the blue, this father stands up and he goes, you know what? ADHD children are angels in disguise. And everyone's like, what's wrong with this guy, you know? Then he went on to elaborate. He said, you know, before I had this ADHD child, I'm like any other Singaporean. I'm only concerned about the 5 C's, right? But after my ADHD child came along, I started to appreciate the small things in life. The every little step that he's able to take, the every little improvement warms my heart and helps me to realize what life is really about. And I'm like, mind blown, right?
Yeah.
And that's so powerful, because when we stop living with the illusion or expectation in our mind, and we allow our eyes to appreciate and be grateful for what we have, it's really truly a learning opportunity where we journey with life compared to resisting.
I'll just add on that. So recently I had to work with a family on this, and you know, it's one thing to hear from the parents, but when you really hear it from the mouth of the child, it's so heartbreaking at times. You know, so when this child I was asking him, you know, so your parents have been sharing with me about certain misbehaviors, and a little bit backdrop, the context is this is our commonly termed the middle child.
Okay.
You know, so we often label it, right, middle child. So this child actually brought up, says that, you know, as I was asking, like, you know, your parents mentioned about your misbehaviors, and maybe you want to tell me more a little bit about it. And his immediate response was like, tell you more for what? You know, I'm the middle child. Everybody says the middle child is, and he gives a whole list of like, whether my parents say this, you know, other people tell me this. Middle child always very problematic one. So the labeling started from the family, the parents probably, you know, and then it has cascaded down. It has more than just a label. It's become his own identity, and he has lived with it. And he's come to a point where he just refused to talk anymore. He's just like, yeah, you perceive it as me, and that's me. You know, so in that session, how we turned around was that I asked, have you ever spoken and shared this what you just told me to your parents? You know, he said that he's not, because he never had a chance to speak. Before he speaks, he's always been nailed down. And we organized that so-called like a family therapy kind of session. And when he spoke, it literally just broke the hearts of the parents, you know. And that was, I would say, the turning point where they started being intentional to change their language, to see the opportunities, you know. And I'm of course glad to report many months down the road, you know, we do see that there are improvements, because when the parents start to shift, the narrative also slowly start to change. It will take time.
And I think it's just so important, right? The way we label our children, or the way we call them, right? I mean, even like as Junior was saying, like the moment we said, oh, that's the problem child, he and she will grow up to be that problem child, right? Because you know, you see him or her with that filter. But if we, like what Carolyn said, look at just that behavior, that child with a particular behavior that needs to be corrected, and then we work on that behavior, but not on the child. And if only we parents, I mean, I'm not a perfect parent, we're all learning, right? Work in progress, right? If we begin to realize that we must love our children just because they are our children. They don't have to earn our love, you know. And if they have behaviors that meet our expectations, we will be able to say, continue to do that. But if their expectations, you know, kind of not met, then we tell them how they can get on track. So it's just so important to love them for who they are, not for what they bring to our table. Like, oh, because they did well in their PSLE, they got what new score, right? 4, is it? And they are the best, you know, so I love you. So if we don't tag our love to what they bring, I think we are in a more resourceful state to be able to influence them. And you know, allow them to let, regardless of which position you are, you have a voice, and your voice is important. Mommy and daddy want to listen to where you're coming from.
It takes a lot of intentionality, because like what Junior you were alluding us probably to is this, that we parent the way we are parented. You know, we carry all that inverted commas, good or bad baggages. You know, that's the manual that we were taught with, and if we are not being intentional to learn, to correct, you know, even improve on it, you know, then you know, it's going to be the same way. You know, even how I learned to be a parent, immediately when my first child, my child came, I just look back at how I was parented, you know, and so I had to do a lot of learning, you know, the way I respond to my kid when he reacts and all those things, you know, the shouting, the screaming, how to cool myself down, and all those things. It takes a lot of, I would say, before you learn, you got to unlearn some of these things first.
I think that's very powerful. Unlearning means we have to let go, because very often parents are listening to some parts. Okay, I like this part, but I don't really want to let go because I still think I'm right. And then guess what? I will only adopt a fraction of this new whatever that I'm hearing, and no wonder it doesn't work. See, it doesn't work. It's my child is the problem, right? But I think really in unlearning is to really let go and completely embrace a new mental model to connect with them. So I love what you're sharing in disconnecting the identity from the actions, because very often labels come in: naughty child, you're so loud, you're so fast, you're so slow, you're so lazy, and then that becomes who I become. Law, you say lazy, then law, I'm lazy, or you say stupid, you know. So that our language, and even for positive ones, right, where I'm very mindful, not because even positive labels do box them up, and they feel they have to live up to it, and they don't try something else. You know, so I'm the spotty one, even when I don't want to, I'm afraid, I just no, I have to show like I'm the spotty or the popular one, and then we disconnect from the fears or the emotions that are very real in the moment. So instead of labels, right, and how labels are so unintentional, right, we just say them because we think we're describing, right, but I realized that words are actually creative. They are not descriptive. They are really, we have the power to create just in our language.
Definitely. So one of the things that we laugh about is like whenever we have family time together and my kids were to call each other's name, then they say, remember what mommy say, words have power. And this comes from a 30-year-old girl So and this has been one of the things that we've been drumming to them. You don't go around calling people stupid, because they all look at them as valuable people, with certain actions. Yeah. So and what you say as parents is so important, because you're helping that child establish their identity too. And as we are supposed to help them build that healthy self-esteem, image. And so if we call them other names, we are destroying them. And they got enough sources of destruction everywhere else already, right?
Of course.
Yes, and then our voice really matters a lot to them.
Yes.
And that's why one of the things I always remind myself is namaste. You know the Indian way of greeting each other. If you understand the meaning, namaste is actually an honor or a greeting to your highest potential. So yes, in the moment you may be displaying very horrible a tantrum, right? But when I say namaste, it reminds the person and me of the potential that you are. That you may not even see your potential here, and you are definitely not displaying it, but I see you for your potential. I do not see you for your actions in the now, for your failures, or for what others see you. I see you for the potential that you can be. And I think if parents begin to open our lenses, to begin to, what is that potential? What is that potential? It really projects a future that is beyond even their dreams. And I think that's a very powerful role and a privilege that we get to feel.
Yes, it's
So I
about
mean, like
broadening your perspective, right?
Yes.
So like
Yes.
EJ said, right, if you start telling the child, oh, you're middle child, that's why you're like that. And sometimes when they're having a conflict, right, you say, there you go, so stubborn, there you go, so obstinate. I'm like, maybe you could just think about your child being an independent thinker.
Correct.
Right?
See the strength.
Yeah, so
Yes.
immediately you get into a much more resourceful state.
Yes, always
right?
look at the other side.
And I think
Correct.
sometimes it's very sad in the family, because then it's almost that like there is a conspiracy. Because if 4 persons, I said
Yes.
five, right? 4 persons are telling me, drowning me day in, day out. Don't even count the in-laws or the helper or anyone else. Can you imagine? Like it's unfair, literally we are almost being the bully, because I keep drilling that into you. I keep insisting, not just me, but daddy also say, mommy also say, and okay lor, you win lor, I cannot make it lor. That mentality.
Yeah.
And with that, I want to shift back to the responsibility of the parent. So EJ, we are talking about who, right?
Yeah.
Very often our kids actually model us,
Yes.
right? Whether we like it or not, the truth is they model us, right? So what advice would you give, right, in how do we empower parents to work on their own conflict resolution style first?
Yeah, good question. So behind while we're preparing for this session, we all probably unanimously agree that before working on the child is to work on ourselves. That sense of mindfulness to take care of our own being first. So even simple steps like and I'm telling all the parent viewers here, even just take 5 to cool and calm yourselves down, because we are all emotionally charged up. Even when you're triggered by what your kids do, you see them fighting, the first thing is you're reacting. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and cool down. And cooling down with intention, knowing that, hey, the next action, the course of action you take is very powerful. And I give this little a simple illustration. Just recently I was having this fun observation with my 6-year-old boy. And he did something. He forgotten to take something out of the house. We left the house. We were already at the bus stop. And because he forgot to bring his bus card, we had to go all the way back another 300-400 meters back home to get it. And my immediate reaction was like, and really holding. There was a lot more I wanted to say, but just like, okay, now we gotta make our way back home. Now I was in that like kind of mode, And a few days later, something happened at home, and he was just building his own toys, and he was so frustrated, because he couldn't get that thing up. The more he built higher, he fell down. He got frustrated, and I didn't intervene. Independence, right? So you do it yourself. And the next thing I heard was, talk about imitation. He was really imitating, and I was asking myself, where did he learn that from? I mean, I could have assumed he learned it from the classmates, but definitely the one that he spent most time with, closest to, is the parents. And he learned it from me. And so when I saw it for myself, I was like, jaw drop. Even a simple thing like this will happen. So really, I encourage parents, know the impact and the power of the actions, the choice of the words that we say. So if you constantly say things like, oh, why you're so silly, why you're so stupid, whatever, you might, I'm not assuming this thing, but you might just see that they're going to use that words very often on themselves or on their siblings as well. So parents, to better guard yourself, I think cooling down is very important. whatever helps you to cool down, yeah. Breathing technique, have parents who go to the stairwell there and just sit there and watch a nice short comedic video that helps them to cool down. Whatever, it takes a slow walk, get some groceries, and then you come back and then you engage. And sometimes it's also good to tell the child, if you're having a conflict with the child or the person, say, hey, I don't feel too good, I'm going to go take a breather for like 5-10 minutes, and then we'll come back and talk again. And I think that breathing space is a cooling down for both parties too. So I think calming our emotions is important.
May I chime in here? I think when we talk about modeling, right, the models is not just the parent and the child. How about the parents themselves?
Yes.
When they have a conflict.
Yes.
So I speak from my own place when we were younger. When I'm upset with my husband, it's like, oh, you really let it out, right? And I'm so extroverted, right? I will, and my husband, oh no. And then on top of that, I will go justify, find allies with my children. See, that's what daddy did, da, 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 da. And now that I'm much older, I reflect back, what have you actually done to your relationship? And how have you been a model to your children? And they have all this thinking about their father being in a certain space. And they also realize that what mommy does is that she talks about that person she's upset with. And they don't have that skill of saying, if I'm upset at that person, maybe I can find opportunity to speak in a way that the person can listen, that conversation with intentionality, to tell them, when you took my book, I felt upset because you did not ask me for permission. In future, I would like you to tell me that you need my book or you want to borrow. So if we are able to kind of like show them in a very intentional way, then they are picking up, because no point telling them, you should do this. They are watching you all the time. Yes. And so fortunately, we've been given a second chance, many chances. And so my husband and I, we are really much more intentional. We do have conflicts, but we settle it in a much more respectful way. Like I respect him, he respect me, and we talk about it. And I think this, just like maybe a few years ago, my children have actually turned back and said, hey, mommy and daddy, you have fewer conflicts these days. And I think it's so important for couples to be able to work together, and that's the thing that they see at home.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
A primary school boy a couple of years told me this, when he was resolving siblings rivalry with his younger sister. He says, talk louder, win already. So there was two things I noticed: talk louder and win already. Where do you learn the talk louder from? Oh, my mom and dad lah. When they quarrel, the mom talks louder, mom sure wins, because dad will shut up. And I said, what is this about winning? He says, because when we talk, it's about winning, right? So we tend to view the shaping of the narratives is that conversation, somebody must win and the other must lose. And I don't think that's always the case. Sometimes when we want to work out siblings rivalry, it's about win-win sometimes. If you try to force a win-lose, maybe it's a both lose. So you don't get the toys, you don't get the playtime, you don't get the both hurt each other's feelings. That's a lose-lose for everybody.
I completely agree with that, because in the end, the win-lose mentality will result in a lose-lose, because the relationship for one has gone south already. Yeah, so looking at the what now, okay, what do we do? Because I assert that very often in any family setting, there are patterns. If we actually pause, zoom out, there are patterns that it's the repeat of the same disagreement, the same circumstance, the same pet peeve, the same topics. So, Caroline, how do parents begin to recognize these patterns?
Okay, so when a situation occurs, what we want to look at are the ABCs of the event, the antecedents, the behaviors, and the consequences. So antecedents, basically, it's about looking at what happens before the behavior. When did it happen? Is it in the morning, in the afternoon, at night? Who was there? Where did it happen? What exactly triggered the situation? And are there setting events that led to this trigger? Setting events are basically like, for example, it didn't trigger the immediate behavior, but it kind of set the context for it. Like, for example, the kid was very tired or hungry, or he had a bad day in school, so he was already grumpy. And then the sibling came along and snatched his toy. That's the trigger, right? So we want to look at the antecedents. Then we also want to look at what happened during the behavior. What did the boy say? What did the sister say? How did he respond? How did they respond to each other? How did it escalate? And then finally, in terms of consequences, you know, how did it end? You know, how did things die down? Who stepped in? You know, did someone come in and stop the thing and become an arbiter and say, you're right, you're wrong? Or did someone come in and, you know, tell them both to separate and go to their rooms? Or take the toy and go, okay, you take it, you know? So how was that resolved, right? So when we look at this sequence of events, we call it chain analysis. We are then able to see, okay, at what point can we then intervene and change things? How can we make things better? How can we avoid triggers? How can we make sure that, you know, when a child is grumpy or irritable, we don't go and add things to provoke him? How can we teach the child skills to be able to like respond better to the sibling or whoever's provoking them? At what point would one person need to walk away and learn soothing and calming behaviors? How can the parent then respond in a way that is more helpful to resolve the situation in a more healthy way?
I love your perspective, because I think instead of seeing the isolated incident or often it's the B already and we are reacting at the B, is to zoom out, to recognize the A, and it's not just the antecedent, but even the context set up prior to that. And I think as we teach that to our children, not just us learning it and mastering it first, it then in life, can you imagine when they go out, they know how to 做人, or rather their EQ goes up because they are recognizing, they are looking, they are being more mindful of their environment and what they can do to make a difference, right? Instead of being at the mercy or at the effect of, they are now in the space of causing a good space, right? So very often, if let's say you see this child storming in already or come back with black face, we don't have to wait for the explosion to occur. We can diffuse the potential bomb here now, and just connecting why today tired, huh? And what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Then there's no need to even reach that heightened arousal state.
Correct. Correct.
I love the way that little demo you just did, you know, just having a physical touch and say, dear, how are you doing? Because I think that diffuse is the right word, you know, and we just need can you imagine? I mean, I've seen many families where you just come home and you say, what a long face? You know, it's like, you know, you're just taking the bomb even further, you know.
Trigger.
It's triggering even further, right? You know, so sometimes I feel like parents, even you know your child's personality, you probably also know, and this generation of parents have done a lot of all these assessments and quizzes like love languages and all that. We know what is the love language of our children, and if you could tag it all this along, you know, when they come home, you see them pulling a long face, you know, or you already saw some telltale warning signs, you step in, maybe just while they're alone, and just be with them. You know, meet them at their point where it is suited for them. Be it their love languages, be it over a cup of ice cream, you know, having those conversations, and just to soothe them down. Because once we are soothed down emotionally, the words that comes out will also be different. It is not so fuel charged, it is kinder, it has more perspective to it as well.
Wonderful.
So I think really to be able to do that requires the parents to also sometimes just sit down and reflect on the day, what caused you to react like that.
Yes.
And the more aware we are of ourselves, then the more we are, in choosing our response to a child.
Yeah.
Because some parents cannot take blackface. Like, you blackface, I've been working hard the whole day and I blackface also.
Yeah.
So
I never blackface, you blackface.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
And they're so reactive,
Yes.
and allowing their circumstances to really dictate, who they are. And some of them go to pity party and so I think the self-awareness is so important.
Yeah.
Right? Because a child's behavior might, like you say, right, reflect something in you that's not you.
Correct.
Yeah? So
Correct.
what is that? And then of course we may not know everything, but I think the more you're in touch with yourself, the more you can then kind of parent from a rested position.
And like what you say, right, that's very powerful, that self-reflection, because what may trigger my husband may be different from what triggers the number one or number two. So for each of us to own that and to work on that, because each of us have different issues to iron out. Our greatest demons are within ourselves, right? So I want to ask, right, when we talk about the how, specifically, reflection is one, but what are positive family cultures that we could set to interrupt these patterns? Any suggestions?
So again, since young, for us, we have some norms, and the norm is whether no matter how angry you are not allowed to touch the other person. So no physical violence, and I think that saves like maybe 50% of the problem, right? Because I don't have people hitting the head. Yeah, so I start very young, and I know it's fortunate that they kind of like abide with that. But of course, I cannot stop them from that verbal thing, you know what I mean? Because they have to let it out somehow. But I think verbally, at least you still can manage the way teach them about languaging and all those. So that was one thing that we work on. And I think really mentioning to them about that words have got power is so important. But guess what? I mean, these days the kids are all older. I don't have time to like, no, you're going to look at mommy. I can catch them when they're having actually fun time. So that's where we give each other feedback, like, oh, this one was so, emo. And then, we laugh it out. And I think so, like what you say, right? Developmental stage, and you just kind of really need to size out where they are and be able to intervene at the right time. And it's actually working well. And sometimes for us with, adult kids, right? Adults, you might need to also realize that you just have to stay off for a while and maybe let them sort it out. And trust that they can sort it out. That you don't always have to have everybody smiling at each other. After a while, they might. And don't magnify the problem like, because they're not talking to one another, there will be the younger generation will affect us. Sometimes we magnify this thing and we cause ourselves so much anxiety and worry. So trust the kids sometimes, and trust your own upbringing and the way you brought the kids up, right? That they have got the skill, they can find time to talk to each other, and they might be able to solve the problem.
That is a very good point, because I think a lot of us are very scared of negative feelings. Don't be angry, don't be sad, and we try to like suppress that. But actually being able to sit with negative feelings and discomfort is part of learning distress tolerance, which is a very important skill.
Yeah, I agree. Just talking about that, about holding the healthy tensions within us, sitting on it, and just because when you reflect, it doesn't always reflect positive feelings and emotions, but self-reflecting upon those, like, I felt terrible today, as you mull upon it, then you begin to strategize and think like, so then what do I want to do about it, and I also want to add on like 2 strategies maybe for parents, which I find is not common today, but I think we can be a bit more intentional, is having some routines. So 2 routines I usually like to do with families, and also my own family, we're doing this, is that as we end the day with reflection, really, 2 reflection, and then we end 2 parts of the ending, reflection and like Thanksgiving. You want to end the day on a thankful note, even if it's a bad thing that has happened. When you choose to be thankful, you look at it and you ask yourself, what could we learn from it? Reflection would be, at the end of the day, wow, today we had a bad fight, we had a bad quarrel, I saw mommy and dad quarrel, I had a fight with my siblings, and what were you feeling out of it? So you draw out the emotions. Also, I encourage parents to, set aside maybe like an hour before the bedtime routines and all that, or 45 minutes, just have those moments with the children, and do this kind of little activity to prep them, instead of closing the day with all on the screens, watching videos, and that disrupts the sleep and convenience, I know this takes effort from the parent, because you end up like a facilitator, but I guess if we're all intentional and vested as parents for the long haul, these are investments that we put in. Really, I tried the thankfulness one. All right, thanks to you. Even with I'm doing this with my 5-year-old, starting from 5 years old, he did it. Of course, it's very superficial nowadays. I thank you for toys. I'm thankful for this. But you're cultivating that spirit within them.
Yes, I can add in. This is really very exciting because now that the kids are older, it's very hard to get them to do that. I wish I also knew about this when I was younger. So we don't have the practice, but I think it's so wonderful. It's really a form of gratitude, right? It's a form of building resilience. So it's not too late. So what we do is sometimes for our birthdays, we put that person onto that special chair, right? And then tell the person what we value about that person. And I think on 24th of December, in align with this Christmas, or I think Center of Fathering or something, like they encourage this thing called Affirmation Day, where you put everybody, give everybody a chance to sit on that chair, and you affirm that person of their strength, how they, the value they bring into the family itself, right? So I always believe that we're so good at catching people do wrong things.
Critic.
Yeah, we're so quick at our children, you see, throw papers on the floor, okay? Never keep the books. Can we try to catch them doing things right?
Yeah.
And I think affirmation day or affirmation practices are moments where we tell the child, I value you for who you are and what you brought to the family, right? And I think it is so affirming. And this, will help to reduce that thing about increase their healthy build their healthy self-image. And, also like stop parents from comparing. Why you not like Jeje? Jeje got certain score. Why you not like your whatever? So I think when parents compare, then we don't value the person as an individual.
And maybe is something worthwhile doing, having the siblings affirm each other.
Yes.
I think that's so powerful, and we are at a time where, because parents are more educated today, they know how to affirm the kids also, they're trying to do more. But amongst the siblings, sometimes it's very awkward, especially those about same age, or they have some fights and tensions, and to put them in front and say, I affirm you, but the more you do it, they feel it.
Actually, that's what we do at dining table. We will just sit down, depending, right? Maybe once a week, depending. So what I'm trying to create are cultures, are norms. So, okay, today we start with Alexis. So everybody say at least one good thing. So initially it wasn't easy because where they came from is like, I'm still upset with you for not sharing. But after they begin to expect that at least once a week, we are going round the table and you're going to say good things, it begins to open their eyes to the joy, and not just from one person, right? But, with 5 kids. So, and then as they listen in on to other people's perception of that same sibling, it creates another dimension of positivity, right? So I love this conversation because I think there is this generational obsession with being positive, right? Very often we're like, I'm angry, but don't let it show. I'm jealous, don't let it show. And then we suppress. But instead, right, to allow a healthy space to say, hey, I'm angry. I'm really, really angry. And to experience how anger feels like, and to teach our children to name it, because as they begin to name the emotions they have, it increases their repertoire of emotions from ecstasy all the way to happy, all the way to anger or rage. Instead of, a lot of Singaporeans live within okay, how was the food okay, how was study okay, and then we become so muted in our whole range. And with that, I want to bring us right to role play. Okay, let's have some effective application of what we've been discussing. So, Carolyn, imagine you're working and you hear your 3-year-old son cry,
Right.
while your 5-year-old daughter angrily shouts, "I said no, it's mine." How would you respond?
Okay, so going with what Alison was talking about, the first thing is self-awareness, right? To recognize that maybe I myself might be triggered by the children's behavior. So learning to recognize my own warning signs. Am I starting to clench my fist? Is my jaw starting to get tight? Are my eyes getting narrow? Is the thought, ungrateful children or ungrateful brats going through my mind, right? And once I recognize my warning signs, then I want to do something called ACE. Acknowledge, connect, and engage, right? So in terms of acknowledge, I want to label, as you mentioned, my own emotions. I'm feeling irritated by these kids, right? If I can add on because they are crying and screaming in front of me after I've had such a long day, And this in itself creates diffusion from my emotions. It helps me to have some space to be able to observe my emotions from a distance, and then that gives me more control. At the same time, it helps to activate my prefrontal cortex so that I can be a little bit more logical and help my amygdala, to my emotional part of the brain, to settle down a bit more. Then I want to connect with my body, because a lot of the times when we are triggered, we get a little bit out of our body, right? We feel out of control. So I would push my feet hard into the ground, adjust my posture, sit up straight, right? Take a breath and notice my breath. And then sometimes you might even want to just create like a half smile, right? Put your face into a more serene expression. Why? Because this actually, the facial muscles then will send signals back to the brain to go, okay, it's safe, you can calm down, right? So once you calm yourself down, then you can engage with the children. So how would I engage? I would go to them, and then I would, firstly, with my calm energy, right? It's very important that you yourself is calm, because what's happening in these children's brain is that they are feeling stressed and their brains are going, I'm threatened, I'm not safe. So if you go in like a bull and you go like, what's going on? You know, what's wrong? You're actually making them feel even more unsafe. And then the brain will escalate even more the danger thing, you know, and then they start to get dissociated and they start to like get, you know, even more frustrated. So you go in calm and you let your calm energy tell their brain, look, things are safe. You are secure here. Then what I would do is I would put my hand on them, either on the shoulder or I hold them. And this touch then grounds them. Right? So then I let them cool down a little. And then if they are in the right state of mind, then I might go, okay, so what's going on? And I try to listen from both points of view. And I try to hold back my own immediate reaction to like judge or be an arbiter or try to resolve the problem quickly. And I then try to reflect feelings. You're feeling very upset and hurt because he did that. And you feel resentful because he did that. Right? Is that correct? Right? And then hopefully, because you're acknowledging and validating their feelings and they feel hurt, they can settle down a bit and be in a better place to resolve the issue. And only after that, then I will go, what can we do to make things better?
I so love what you're sharing because you have dissected it and given us steps. And the biggest thing that stands out, right, is that it is a learned response. I mean, very often we just react, but I think in you just giving us the ACE step, it's really to then practice and practice and practice, and it doesn't matter where we are. Today I may be shouting at the child, but if tomorrow I can tahan for another 5 seconds before I may also outburst, I think that's worth a wonderful effort, right? Because we are on this journey where, like what you were saying earlier, I wish I knew the gratitude, I didn't, you know, and I think we can always take what we learn here. And I think the key word is application. And that's why I wanted this role play, because sometimes we know too much in our heads, but without changing our behavior, the culture is still the same. And that doesn't improve the quality of our life. Yeah. So thank you so much, Carolyn. And then now, EJ, your scenario. You're at the dining table.
Okay.
Your 10-year-old shoots the 8-year-old an angry look. So unprovoked, you know, everyone eating quietly. Shoot an angry look. You're always eating so slow. What would you do as the father?
Stop it, I tell you. That's the wrong way.
Negative,
very traditional. And I've seen it in action before in public places, in my family, sometimes with my cousins and uncles and aunties. Immediately, because the loudest always win, right? So because you are louder, I'll bang the table, I'll be louder than you, and you will keep quiet, you know, and then there is peace and harmony. But underneath, a lot of things are
superficially.
Yes, there's a lot of things brewing. So I think a better way is, you know, when you see such a scenario happen. So what I'll do is first check in on myself, right? Very quickly, it may be a snap 10 seconds kind of thing, cool yourself down to prevent reactive response. You know, then the next thing is, you know, go close to your child. All right, and you know, if your child is a very touch kind of person, put a gentle hand on her back or on the shoulder, and hey dear, are you okay?
On the one who is the aggressor.
The aggressor.
Okay.
You know, are you doing okay? You know, it sounds and I do see like, you know, you sound or seem very upset. You know, is everything okay? You know, or you might just want to start, is everything okay? You know, and of course the child, you know, at 10 years old, being still in a very emotional, fiery state. No, okay. You know, just being very prideful, right? You know, and you can still push it even further. Just ask, you know, but it's from what I saw and what I hear you say is, you sound really upset, you know, and is everything okay in school? Did anything happen earlier? You know, just gentle nudges and probing, you know. And I think at 10 years old, they do have certain level of vocabulary and can articulate, so you can engage this way, you know. So by using a gentle tone, we are actually creating a safe at the dining table. So what you're also sending the message indirectly to the other child who is being, all right, the words are being lashed out at, is that you are engaging the issue at that time. All right, you're not like or you're
Letting it
brushing
slide.
it aside, letting it slide, or but you're engaging it very personally, right? So what can happen from there is the child may say certain things. You see that, oh yeah, the day something happened in school, I was bullied, and I was upset, or you may not want to say. So if the child shares, right, or you may engage first. So you can tell the child something like, that really must be terrible. I would like to hear more from you. And so why not we catch up over ice cream later and just to hear more a little bit of what were the issues that you faced in school. So you're telling them, say, we're going to do it later. Right? Of course, the other scenario that could happen is the child is still like, I don't want to say, you think it's always like that one, and he still talk. Usually when the 10-year-old reacts like that, it's nothing got to do with the titi lah, all right, the meme, it's because there were other, the iceberg, the below, there's something festering. Yeah, so you can just gently and say, okay, you do still sound pretty much upset, so why not we have a little, wait till you're a little bit more calm down, all right? When you're ready, mommy and daddy will be here and ready to talk to you, all right? If not, we're going to check in with you later. So two-pronged approach. We're going to tell him, say, we're going to check in with you later. So it's also sending the message that we're not letting this slide, just that later, all right? But if you come and talk to us first, love to. The door is always open for you.
I so love what you talk about in dealing with it immediately, calmly, and with touch. In fact, very often, right, I realize my son can be crying, right? And then the sisters will be so angry. Can you keep quiet? I'm trying to study. All I need to do is I walk in, come. And then he will just walk to me, and then just in a hug, he will just emotionally because I think all they want is to know that somebody cares for me. Like, children, right, their greatest 3 A's, right, is to be, their 3 needs are to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. As long as we see, hear, and acknowledge whatever the spaces they are in, they feel better. Yeah. And Alison, okay, Alison, your scenario is this, you ask both the kids to tidy the room, and then one starts, the other doesn't, and then you come in 10 minutes later, both not doing, and then you ask, hey, what happened? Then one say, I'm the only one doing. The other one say, every time I do is here. And then how would you respond?
Let it be, like what you said, right?
Don't
They will sort it out, yeah. And I think maybe the question...
Wait, let me add. And you have guests coming over in 10 minutes.
That's right. And I think the question is, why are you so bothered? Maybe it's because you want to look good, right? Maybe you don't have to.
Wonderful.
I think we just need to choose the battles, right? So I do have a daughter who's really externally or internally organized. Yeah, so you don't see an organization. And sometimes it's really about, maybe you can just give her a space where she can just, be a bit messy, right? In that sense. But of course, this is really important. Then you want to be able to ask them, put them on the same boat. What will you be able to get when both of you are able to, fulfill the expectation? And generally, when the issue, you are kind of like 10 minutes time, I would really like to let it go because you are going to be a bit more reactive. I think the question is asking them to be able to put themselves in another person's shoe. I think the whole thing about empathy is so important. And I've got one who's pretty, kind of a bit more domineering than the rest. And when the times are a little bit like there's more space, I always would talk about issues outside and get her to say, what do you think the other person is going to do? Because you can't do it on the spot. And guess what? On her wedding day, she said, one thing I learned from mommy is empathy. Right? So it has sunk in. I mean, you have to recognize that she's trying her effort, putting effort to that, and we have to acknowledge it. So I think in summary, really recognizing that there are always 2 levels of communication. First is the topical, it's about the issue. But the second one is the relational message. What are we telling our kids when we say that? The messages that come on to them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alison, because I think there's this saying, right? I don't care how much you know. I really don't give a shit until I know how much you care. And at the heart of each human being is the need to connect. And with that, I think we do have a few more minutes. If you were to leave our viewers with just one actionable advice that they can start practicing today, what would it be for each of you? CAROLYN?
Okay, I think the most important thing is relationship. Building a one-to-one relationship with each of your children so that they know that they are unique and special in your eyes, and then there is less of a need for them to compete for your attention as much. So helping them to feel safe and secure in your love and to see themselves as individuals in their own right.
Thank you, Carolyn. EJ?
Okay, so my advice would be for the parents, and also you can use this for the children. So the importance of connection before we correct, and we can connect via. I'll just leave with us these 3 acronyms: LUV, to listen attentively. Don't just listen to react or respond. Just listen to how the person is feeling. Be understanding. All right, more than just understand the fact, but be understanding to what the other person is feeling, going through empathy. When you talk about perspective thinking, all right, and of course, validating their emotions. So using words that connect with them emotionally. Oh, this is how you are feeling. Am I right? This is what you're thinking about. So when we feel validated in our emotions, then we respond and can hold the conversations better. So connect before we correct, and LUV.
Thank you, EJ.
I think for me is knowing that we all got good intent, but also finding out how that is impacting the other person. That's so important.
Wonderful. I love what each of your amazing conversations that we've had, because in the end, my best intention may land completely differently, and that sours the relationship unnecessarily. Yeah. So I trust that you've had an amazing session, just like we thoroughly did. I'm going to hand you over to Charlene. And with that, I just want to say thank you. Do tune in next week, where we will be focused on fulfilling work. So that's the 3rd and the last weekend, where we'll be talking about the future of jobs. We're going to be talking about the rise of the gig economy. And the topics that we'll be talking about would really be challenging the norms today. So thank you. You have a blessed weekend with your family. Remember to connect, LUV, and
Know your impact even with good intent.
know your impact even no matter your intent. So with that, thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Bye.